the one thing that the Zion Nazis are going to attempt to do is not only sweep all of this under the rug, but also try to rewrite history as quickly as possible. This is why Larry Ellison and his douchebag of a son are trying to buy up all of our media companies. Now, if we actually interpreted the law in this country, which we don't, then we would actually enforce the Sherman Act.
That's an antitrust act for people who were wondering.
So we have these monopolies that are popping up all over the place. And now you're seeing a complete monopolization of our media sphere. You thought that TikTok was the beginning? No, that's just or that it was the end. It's just the beginning. You get TikTok, you get CBS News. Now Ellison is trying to get Warner Brothers, HBO, and CNN for $42 billion. And they won't stop if they get that. They'll keep going. And the whole point is to control the narrative.
Well, I mean, Zios have been rewriting history since they started. That was always part of it. Actually, people don't realize, but in I don't know if it was 47 or 48, when they formed this renaming committee, there was a renaming committee that was created when they created the state of Israel. And there was literally a committee that went around to different historic places, historic sites, Palestinian villages, so on, and renamed them into new names based on a language that they created, basically, that never existed as a spoken language. So they've made up an entire culture. They've made up an entire place, a fictional Disney utopia for themselves that doesn't exist except in their psychotic minds. Like, these are delusional people.
That's a great point. Here we go.
The Free Press recently posted about media coverage of young people starving in Gaza. It concerned photos that it said had helped convince a growing number of Americans that Israel has induced famine and is committing war crimes in Gaza. There is a lot wrong with this article. For one thing, it questions how starvation and famine have been measured by claiming the IPC, the international body that helps monitor food insecurity and malnutrition, has quietly changed its methodology in Gaza, essentially redefining the criteria for determining a famine. But that is false. Very basically, the IPC has multiple metrics for measuring malnutrition in children. One involves measuring height and weight. Another involves arm circumference. Now, because arm circumference only requires a tape measure, it's far easier to obtain, especially in a place like a war zone. So in Gaza, that is what they started using because of, all of this shit happening. And those methods were not, in fact, quietly introduced, as the Free Press suggested, but have been accepted since 2019 and previously used in famine classifications in South Sudan and Sudan. But it gets even grosser because the piece tries to provide extra context for some pictures of starving children. And here's one of its writers, the one who used to work for the Fuckhole Times, summing her work up.
So you've probably seen these photos of skeletal kids in Gaza on front pages, all over social media, even in a UNICEF ad.
All right.
That's the whole point of UNICEF ads. That's all they've ever shown is starving children.
Now, I'm poising this here for a reason. I'm going to put it on this young girl so you can see what real starvation looks like. And I'm also going to tell you who Olivia Reingold is. You want to know? So she is one of Bari Weiss's closest confidants, and she is also the person who just wrote the article about Zoran Mamdani welcoming Zionists into his administration. So that's who she is. And this is a person who has reinterpreted history in real time. If that's not an Ashkenazi, I've never seen one. Besides, you can tell that she's allergic to the sun, so naturally she must be from the Middle East.
MJ's right. MJ says donkey. We call it horsey face, but yeah, she's horsey face.
That's for you guys.
I'm just saying.
Fair enough.
Ad, they've become the symbols of famine. But we decided to look into these photos and the stories behind them. And what we found is that in case after case, these kids were sick, but not just with malnutrition. In every instance, they were suffering with other conditions or illnesses like cystic fibrosis, cerebral palsy, and even traumatic head injuries.
Now, their article claims all those kids were already facing grave situations because of their health, irrespective of any third-party action. But a few things. First, the traumatic head injury she mentioned was, as their article points out, caused by an Israeli shell explosion, which feels like a pretty significant third-party action. Second, it's not like the 12 photos they chose to look into are the only ones illustrating stories about famine in Gaza. And as for the notion that this is something that the mainstream media was ignoring, there is a key problem with that claim too. And see if you can spot it as she walks through their in-depth journalistic process.
We did something so simple, it's shocking that no other journalist bothered to do it. So this is how we figured this out. Let's just take this example of Najwa Hussein Hajj, who appeared in CNN simply as suffering from severe malnutrition in Gaza City. So all we did is we took her name, we went to Google Translate, we took the Arabic spelling of her name, put that into Google, and pulled up a lot of local clips in which her parents were talking about what was really going on. And what we learned is that she has an esophagus condition, which is something that was even reported in English media, including
I'm gonna vomit.
the New York Times. That
Are
is
you
a quite
wait. That is what they spent their time researching? That was your big fucking journalistic, venture? Oh my God. Like that's what you did a deep dive into. Starving child.
They probably had a very difficult time finding anything that they could use, so they came up with this convoluted story to suggest that there's a reason why she looks like a cancer patient.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm raging too, baby.
different and more nuanced story than the assumption that Israel wants her dead and they're starving her.
OK, so if no other journalist bothered to do it, but it was even reported in the New York Times, that sure suggests the journalist very much did bother to do it. But also, if we're talking about context, when it comes to the child she mentioned there, they quote from an Arabic news outlet. Here is the whole section about her from that outlet. Here's the translation. And here's the quote the Free Press pulled, mentioning her ailments since birth, including vomiting while eating. But it's worth noting, the sentence before says her condition worsens each day without access to protein and vitamin-rich foods that are needed for her treatment. And the line after reads, during the Israeli war on the Gaza Strip, her condition deteriorated and she developed malnutrition because the right food for her was simply unavailable. And while I would love to keep splitting hairs on whether a country's starving kids is better or worse if those kids are already sick, let's just table that discussion for when I see you in hell. And
see, he does rage in a much more comical way and he, I am just.
Now, I would be the first person to say, and this is also our task. Remember, Jen and I have been talking about this for almost 2 years now. There is little, if anything, that we can do to save the Palestinians in Gaza or the West Bank. But you know what we can do? We can change things here in the States. How we organize, what we go after. As far as I'm concerned, Olivia Reingold, she needs to be in The Hague. This is a person who is complicit in war crimes. She works with Bari Weiss at the Free Press, and the reason why Larry Ellison, the biggest financial contributor to the IDF in the world, decided to pay her $150 million to buy out the Free Press and put her in charge of CBS News is because they looked at their content, saw somebody like Olivia doing war crime denial type journalism and thought, that's exactly who we need.
I hope these people are ready to really go down with the ship, because they're going. They're going. All these people are going to go when the Zio state folds. They're all going to go. Some of them will go like in The Hague. The rest of them are just going to disappear.
And I've often said that the people who need to suffer the most are princesses like her.
Oh, she's disgusting.
This is a person who has never worked a day in her life, has never felt struggle a day in her life. She is a privileged Ashkenazi who has never been told no, but eventually the wheels are going to turn in the other direction. It's
But I
simple
love
as-
that he's calling her out. Isn't he basically owned by one of those companies?
I believe that John
HBO?
Oliver's, I think he's HBO. Yes, I believe so. But you know
So-
what? I think Oliver's the type of person who's like, look, it doesn't matter. I'll find my way around it.
No, he does not sound like that. All right, let it finish because he's great.
And that is not the only bit of cherry picking in that piece, which features a lot of young people with, yes, pre-existing conditions or ailments, but which were made significantly worse when they couldn't access food. And to be clear, as the president of Refugees International wrote, people with underlying conditions always suffer first when hunger sets in, adding that vulnerability is not a rebuttal of famine, it is a feature of how famine kills and who it hits first. And it is kind of weird that nobody at the Free Press thought to include that sort of important context, given that they are famously proud of their ability to Google shit. And you should also know that piece circulated far and wide among those seeking to downplay the suffering in Gaza, including Bibi Netanyahu himself, who shared that video on his social media with the caption, "Facts matter," which is terrible for multiple reasons, including if Netanyahu ever shared one of our stories, I think I'd burn this place to the fucking ground. And by the way, any story too. Even if it was the one where I ate the arse of a cake bear that looks like me. If you retweeted that with the comment, "Facts matter," you would never hear from us ever again. And look, everything I've shown...
That's funny. And I get it. You know, look, people, we're not making a commentary on John Oliver's politics in general, but he was definitely spot on with this. And the fact that somebody like Bari Weiss is in charge of like a media conglomerate is so hilarious and yet horrifying. But what I just, people need to stop using these sources. Like, I can't tell you the last time I wouldn't read that swill. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is, I need to bring up my slide. I have the perfect slide. I have the perfect slide for this, guys.
Do share. And
So we used to do story time a lot. So this would fall under the story of the Journal of Contemporary Yellow Journalism, a record of news fit to piss on. And that's how I think, like, it's a rag. Like, why not just go read the Inquirer? I mean, maybe people do. I don't know. But it's like, if people would stop utilizing those sources, then they would have no power.